Hello, I'm going to start presenting about our research paper, which is Cultural Effect on Human Resource Management in different countries and its multinational companies. And this research is done at the Yonsei University and conducted by Professor Sean Watts. And my name is Daejin Yang, and I'm going to be the first presenter of our group. First is our hypothesis, which was set as the human resource management of Western culture will be task-oriented, while data-based culture will be relationship-oriented. And this chart shows Hofstede's culture dimension, which is based for our hypothesis. And this is the main XSCI article that we replicated in our paper, and its title is Asia Pacific Business Review, Globalization and Employment Relations in the Korean Auto Industry. And I'm going to present about our research plans and the introduction of our paper. This paper compares human resource management practices of different countries, which is Korea, China, USA, and Germany. Such a comparison can identify unique features of the nation's HRM systems. This paper will be a guide to help multinational companies to adapt and figure human resource concepts and cultures across countries. The question is, in what extent to which human resource practices differ between nations, and analysis of the relevant literature reveals two perspectives, which are cultural and universalist. This paper is more focused on cultural perspectives rather than a universalist perspective. Whereas this paper's hypothesis set as I mentioned before, this hypothesis is derived from Hofstede's cultural dimension, which is indicated by Hofstede in 1991, which said that management practices and value differ from country to country due to each nation's unique and traditions. Thus, Hofstede's cultural dimension framework is used as basis for examining the cultural differences between two cultures on the following dimensions, which are power distance, individualism, collectivism, uncertainty avoidance, achievement and nurturing, and long-term versus short-term orientation. And now, the next presenter will start to present about South Korea's human resource management.
Hi, my name is Kang and I have researched on HRM system in South Korea. There have been some concerns about Korea's traditional tight labor control and low labor cost competitiveness. The major trigger of changes in HRM of Korea is the 1997 Asian financial crisis. Sudden environmental pressure from the crisis and IMF bailout was critical to reappraising traditional Korean HRM, which led Korean chaebol, which is conglomerate groups like Samsung, to take reconsideration about the company's HRM system. We will analyze the traditional HRM of Korea, which is relationship and seniority oriented, and find out if any major changes occurred to the traditional HRM system, how and why it changed, and to what extent it has changed. Since the early 1990s, HRM practices in Korea went through enormous changes. The traditional HR system was focused on employees cultivating long-term loyalty to their companies and organizational attachment from employees by providing job security and various seniority-based HRM policies. Such traditional HRM policies and practices have led to the rapid growth of Korean firms since the 1960s. However, globalization followed by international competition and economic distress, and especially the IMF bailouts, demanded a more efficient and flexible utilization of human resources with lower labor costs. The economic difficulties and the rigidity of the traditional employment system have forced employers to reconsider the practice of long-term employment and adopt the relatively short-term, performance-based, and market-oriented methods of managing human resources. The lifetime employment was greatly weakened in most private companies. Seniority-based pay system is still a dominant form of remuneration in Korea, but merit pay system, which is the wage system emphasizing individual ability and performance, has gained popularity from last decade. Since the financial crisis, Korean HRM style has gone through a major change in the system, becoming increasingly westernized. Hiring decisions are made at a more decentralized level, and in the employee selection process, the importance of interviews was emphasized rather than on traditional paper and pencil tests and high GPAs. The training and education programs within companies focus more on technical knowledge and skills than on loyalty and commitment to the company, like in the past. The tendency to adopt American HRM practices existed before the financial crisis, but the crisis itself seemed to accelerate this trend. The traditional lifetime employment and seniority wage systems are likely to reduce employees' loyalty and organizational commitment. Nevertheless, the adoption of the performance-based pay system should improve the flexibility involved in controlling labor costs by making individual pay contingent on performance. It seems that the departure from traditional employment practices has already begun in leading Korean firms. However, sense of uncertainty arose about the nature of the new paradigm that will replace the traditional principles. Moreover, the adoption rates of this new paradigm of HRM has not yet widely spread across companies. Most of large companies face environmental constraints, and they respond in various ways according to their institutional situations, tastes, preferences, or strategic choices of key decision makers. Thus, we expect that HRM systems differ among large Korean firms. It could be interpreted that Korean human resource management consists of its uniqueness, but has adopted Western task-oriented style to its traditional HRM practices. Its original HRM style was largely relationship-oriented, especially familial and seniority relationship. The originality still exists within companies' identity, but their operation went through alternation with the adoption of Western style of HRM practices, which is task-oriented. The next presenter will continue.
Hello, my name is Junho Kim from Yonsei University. The first thing we will be seeing is the guanxi. This is the important term in Chinese business law. This is based on Confucianism, which focuses on relationship. The guanxi itself means the network. Although it might simply look as just like nothing, but it is really important as this might take Chojan. And let's take a look at the differences between Western culture and Chinese business practices. The first thing we'll be seeing is the recruitment. Although Western practices only look at job interview, while the Chinese practices, they can just hire a person based on network, which is guanxi. The next part is training and development. As you can see here, the individual activities is the practices of Western culture, whereas the Chinese culture practices is to have the training altogether. And the next part of the differences is the employee relations. As we look at the power distance, China has the very high power distance, and this is reflected in the practices of business law. So as you can see here, the Western practice of employee relations is two-way, where boss can really talk to his subordinates, while subordinates could also feel free to talk to his boss. But the Chinese practice is different. Although the boss could really talk to his subordinates, but it's not the same way for the other way around. The next part is the reward structure. As you can see here, a personal achievement is the main criteria for getting the reward. However, the achievement by team is the key to the reward structure in Chinese practices. However, when it comes to multinational companies, such as Hire, they have the innovative HRM system right now. The OEC management system, which stands for overall, everyday, everyone, and everything, to be clear control. So basically, you have to do everything every day under clear control. And there are specific criteria which could give you incentives, while also it could have you fined. So this specific criteria will not let the So this criteria will let the company to be more transparent compared to historical, traditional practices. I'll now hand it to the next presenter.
Hello, my name is Kwon, and I'm going to talk about the US's human resource management. The United States of America has title of dominant country of the world, since US has about 43% of the world's economic productivity and possess approximately 40% of high-tech products. The US has more than half of the world's top 40 universities and one-third graduate students, which indicates their prominent characteristics of emphasizing, and one-third graduate students, which indicates their prominent characteristic of emphasizing the significance of the training of human resource. And this also implicates that they are heavily invested in human capital to retain a large number of high educated, qualified talents. Interesting feature of their HRM is that they focus not only cultivating their human resources, but also introducing on top level resources worldwide for its use. The real power of HRM strategy of USA, which makes them to be talent country, is considered as practicing a set of mature implementation mechanism of human resource value, the model adjusting to their unique features. This particular HRM model emphasizes four highness. As you can see, high popularity of higher education and social training system. Second, high threshold of human resource immigration policy. Third, high competitive market allocation mechanism. And lastly, high value enterprise personal system. The HRM of the United States mainly puts its importance on a way of specialization and systematic to create strong corporate culture. And in addition, its HRM sector are open to visit employees' response towards its system to solve the conflicts or the dissatisfaction in order to maintain a structured balance between employer and employees. This practice is regarded as important in its structure, since it encourages employees to participate in the operation, develop strategies actively, and lastly, motivates employees to meet their senses of achievement. One thing that our project has chosen the USA is the trend of globalization has great influence on its HRM system, since globalization means intense competition. More competition refers to more pressure to achieve the requirement of world class. Regardless of the impact which globalization gives, the United States seems to succeed in adaptation. Therefore, understanding and learning its human resource management is significant for future business management leaders to improve their system more efficiently. The HRM strategies of the United States of America, the human resource development, planning, recruitment, evaluation, and management are generally constructed upon the consideration of its unique cultural characteristics. HRM can be slightly different in terms of its circumstances and external or internal influences. However, their HRM typically includes following characteristics. First, increased investment in education. Second, in the rigid salary system, the form of incentives is to diversify and efficient. And lastly, emphasize more on the competency-based management. The first characteristic focuses on tendency of increased investment on training. The essential key for companies' sustainability lies on learning and innovation. In recent trend of HRM among US enterprises. This is due to the fact that investing in human capital training will be beneficial. They invest in more on, for example, in the case of Motorola, they invested more than $1 billion a year on training system to provide opportunity to learn the latest skill through establishing Motorola universities in worldwide, including Brazil, South Africa, and China, with internet courses available. As Motorola has invested in enhancing employees, the United States enterprise has been establishing universities increasingly. 400 universities in 1980s, and it has reached 2,600 universities in 2008. Moreover, these universities provide lifelong training service and teaches the latest science to ensure the workers to exploit their intellectual potential fully to improve productivity in both human capital and production. The second feature of HRM in USA is that USA enterprises set wages based on segregation of one's duties, which includes different levels of professional position experience of managers. The United States enterprise values individual, which makes its incentives based on individual ability rather than educational qualification. Also, in order to unite the people, the HR department introduced various forms of incentives. For example, JP Morgan and Goldman Sachs, the employee's salary must be added with shareholders' return. Company also provides insurance for their workers and other family members to show pension, which leads to conclude USA has a rigid salary system with diversified and efficient incentive system. It is said that the behavior of people generally reflects their native culture. The characteristic of the United States of America is categorized as individualistic person. In addition, typical citizens of the United States is perceived as ethnocentric, materialistic, due to their task-oriented lifestyle. So, as general USA culture indicates high individualism, it is reflects on this HR practices in enterprises. As this table shows that a category of recruitment and release of personal training and development, employees assessment and promotion criteria, employee incentives, communication within the company, a superior subordinate relationship, and overall HR model is focused on task-oriented characteristics. So I have concluded that USA's HRM is based on task-oriented. And next presenter will talk about Germany's HR system.
Hello again, my name is Seijin Yang, and I'm going to finish our presentation by explaining about Germany's HRM and our conclusion. It is too small for you guys to see, but this chart it shows that German companies have oriented themselves to some degree toward American HRM practices. Interesting part is somewhere over there, it's 7.1. It's talking about although Germany shares similar Western culture with the US, but it is more person-oriented, while that of the US represents style of task-oriented. However, as the world is becoming globalized, Germany's decision makers are willing to adopt the idea of preference orientation. And German HRM system is so little known to the others because it lies in the middle between American HRM and Japan HRM, which is Western culture and the Eastern culture. Because of its in-between characteristics, it is hard to grasp a straightforward idea of what German HRM is. Also, analysis from many countries regard the HRM system of Germany to be a mixed style USA and Japan. And they predict that much countries' HRM style will eventually resemble German style due to the globalization. In addition to the in-between characteristics, German has its unique HRM style, which is that German HR managers are substantially curtailed because of the high number of labor laws, regulations, and contractual agreements with the unions, and participation rights of the Works Council. And this figure also represents the German style is in between the that of West and that of East. So that's my conclusion for Germany's HRM. And now I'm going to present our research conclusion. For conclusion, our original hypothesis, which was set as the human resource management of Western culture will be task-oriented, while that of Eastern culture will be relationship-oriented. So our hypothesis was proven right at some point, but we won't be able to apply this hypothesis to the whole wide world. And also the Hofstede culture dimensions, we cannot apply also to the whole world, because nowadays the world is becoming globalized and cultural differences no more plays an important role when examining the different HR systems in countries. Thank you, and this is the end of our presentation.